What if the events unfolding around us are not mere coincidences, but a part of a divine plan? Imagine a world stage, where nations are like actors playing their part, each decision and action contributing to a grand narrative. Now let's zoom in on Israel. The spotlight has been shining brightly on this small but significant country in recent times, and not always for the most favorable reasons. Israel has been grappling with a challenging global public relations battle, especially after 6 months of conflict in Gaza. The world's gaze has been fixed on this nation, and the response has been increasingly critical. World leaders, often seen as the moral compass guiding international relations, have been voicing their concerns. None other than the President of the United States, a traditionally staunch ally of Israel, has openly criticized the country's military operations. But it's not just words that Israel is contending with. Actions have been taken too. Take South Africa, for instance. They've gone a step further, putting Israel on trial for what they term as genocide. A harsh allegation indeed, and one that has undoubtedly raised eyebrows around the world. And then, there's the United Nations, an organization that represents the collective voice of the global community. They have added to the chorus of disapproval, condemning Israel for its actions. This rising tide of global opposition towards Israel is not just a geopolitical concern. It's also intriguing from a spiritual perspective. It echoes the prophetic warnings found in the ancient texts of the Bible, particularly in the books of Ezekiel and Zechariah. These prophecies talk about a scenario where all nations turn against Israel in the last days. So we find ourselves asking, are we witnessing the unfolding of these prophecies? Could these be signs of the prophesied last days where the world turns against Israel? The Bible, in its profound wisdom, has spoken of days like these. It's in the ancient pages of Scripture that we find forewarnings of a time when global sentiment would shift and the world would turn against the nation of Israel. Take, for instance, the prophetic words of Ezekiel and Zechariah. These biblical prophets, in their time, foresaw a future where all nations would stand against Israel. Ezekiel, in his vivid visions, painted a picture of an embattled Israel, surrounded by hostile nations. Zechariah, too, with his prophetic insight, foretold a time when Jerusalem would become a burdensome stone for all people. Yet, the prophetic narrative doesn't end there. In the apocalyptic pages of the book of Revelation, we find further indications of a unified global opposition to Israel. This book, steeped in symbolism and mystery, speaks of a time when the world will unite under a single entity, often interpreted as a world government or global power. In this vision, Israel stands as a beacon of resistance, facing the brunt of this unified global opposition. Now, it's essential to remember that interpreting these prophecies is no easy task. The imagery and language used are highly symbolic, requiring careful and contextual interpretation. Furthermore, these prophecies were written in a different time, for a different audience, and under different circumstances. As such, applying them directly to our contemporary context can be challenging. Despite these challenges, the parallels between these ancient prophecies and the current geopolitical climate are striking. As we see nations, one after another, criticize and condemn Israel, it's hard not to think about these prophetic words penned thousands of years ago. While we don't claim these prophecies have fully materialized, the similarities cannot be ignored. The world today may not exactly mirror the prophetic scenes painted in the Bible, but the resemblance is uncanny. As we continue to observe the shifting sands of global politics, it's worth keeping these ancient prophecies in mind. After all, as the saying goes, those who do not learn history are doomed to repeat it. When we juxtapose today's happenings with biblical prophecies, a fascinating picture starts to emerge. As we delve deeper into the intricacies of the prophecies foretold in the books of Ezekiel, Zechariah, and Revelation, it's intriguing to see a number of parallels with the current socio-political climate surrounding Israel. Ezekiel and Zechariah hint towards a time where a global opposition against Israel would arise. When we look at the current scenario, there's a noticeable shift in international sentiment. Nations and world leaders are increasingly voicing their criticisms. South Africa's accusation of genocide and the United Nations condemnation serve as prime examples. However, it's vital to note that these parallels are not a perfect fit. The prophecies foretell a scenario where all nations turn against Israel. While there is growing criticism, it would be an overstatement to say that all nations are against Israel at this point in time. There are still countries that stand in support of Israel, providing a stark contrast to the apocalyptic scenario painted by the prophecies. The book of Revelation adds another layer to this complex tapestry. It speaks of a time when the world will unite against Israel. While we have seen instances of countries banding together in their critique, the world as a whole is far from being united on any issue, let alone their stance on Israel. This divergence between prophecy and reality underlines the fact that, although there are similarities, we're not seeing a complete manifestation of the biblical predictions. As we continue to observe the unfolding events, it's also important to remember that interpretations of prophecy can be subjective. What may seem like a direct correlation to one person might appear as a vague resemblance to another. In conclusion, while there are certainly echoes of the biblical prophecies in the current events, there are also significant differences. It's a blend of striking parallels and contrasting discrepancies. These comparisons and contrasts challenge us to view the events in Israel through a fresh perspective. As we wind up, let's take a moment to reflect on the possible connections. We've journeyed through the current scenario in Israel, where conflict and international criticism have become commonplace. We've seen how nations and world leaders have shown increasing opposition, a situation that has been likened to a global public relations battle. Indeed, the situation has reached such a height that some countries have even put Israel on trial for genocide. Next, we delved into the biblical prophecies, particularly those found in Ezekiel and Zechariah, which speak of a time when all nations would turn against Israel in the last days. The book of Revelation echoes this sentiment, foretelling a time when the world unites in opposition to Israel. We've drawn comparisons and contrasts, weighing the current situation against these ancient prophecies. While it's clear that they haven't fully materialized, we've noted an undeniable trend, a growing global opposition to Israel. These connections, whether coincidental or prophetic, have profound implications. If we are indeed witnessing the fulfillment of prophecy, it raises questions about the nature of time, history, and divine intervention. It challenges our understanding of the world and our place in it. On the other hand, if these events are simply the result of political, social, and economic factors, it highlights the urgent need for dialogue, understanding, and peace. It underscores the importance of human agency in shaping our world and the responsibility we share in creating a future where all nations can coexist in harmony. In either case, the situation in Israel serves as a poignant reminder of the enduring relevance of ancient texts. It shows us how these texts continue to inform our perception of contemporary events, coloring our interpretation of the world around us. Whether or not we are witnessing the fulfillment of prophecy, one thing is certain: the events in Israel command our attention, and they provoke thought and dialogue around the world. Please subscribe for more Christian content. Thanks for watching. God bless.